name, mountains shake and crumble. Your name, the oceans roar and tumble. And your name, angels will bow, the earth will rejoice, the people cry out. Lord of all the earth, we shout your name, filling up the skies with endless praise, Yahweh, Yahweh. We love to shout your name, oh Lord. And your name, the morning breaks in glory. Your name, creation sings your story. Your name, angels will bow, the earth will rejoice, the people cry out. Lord of all the earth, we shout your name, filling up the skies with endless praise, Yahweh, Yahweh. We love to shout your name, oh Lord. There is no one like our God. We will praise you, There is no one like our God. We will sing, and there is no one like our God. We will praise you, There is no one like our God. We will sing, there is no one like our God. We will praise you, Jesus, you are God. We will sing. Lord of all the earth, we shout your name, filling up the skies with endless praise, oh Yahweh, Yahweh. We love to shout your name, Lord of all the earth, we shout your name, filling up the skies with endless praise, oh Yahweh, Yahweh. Oh, we love to shout your name, oh Lord. Oh, Yahweh, Yahweh. We love to shout your name, oh Lord.
Grander earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken for my regard. Through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. So let go my soul and trust in Him. Waves and wind still know His name. So let go my soul and trust in Him. Waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me.
Hello, everyone. Since last Sunday, a lot of things have happened. We want to cover some of those. We know that the Harris County has issued a stay-at-home warning to as many people as they can. They're suggesting that we stay inside and at home and out of public places, and we obviously are trying to comply with that. Just to let you know, they have given permission to religious leaders to record services or to do live streaming as long as we maintain our social distancing. So we're not breaking any laws at the moment by doing this. But also school has started, so that's really affected a lot of y'all. Some of y'all are working from home and are now emergency certified to be teachers, and most of us with children have children home all day. So some people are adapting pretty well, some people are still experimenting, and some people are actually thriving. Now, I haven't met any of those people yet, but I'm sure there's some out there. But our bodies and our minds and our emotions and our families work best whenever there's order and there's rhythm. And I feel like a lot of people are trying to find a new order and a new rhythm. And this is what we know about God. God built order and rhythm into His creation. Unfortunately, part of the influence of sin, part of the detriment of sin, is to create disorder. This is why Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians that God is not a God of disorder, but a God of order. So we can understand that when God builds something, He builds rhythm and order into that. So this gives us hope. Since we've been talking about God creating a nation and giving them a place, we can assume that God's nation was structured with rhythm and order. In fact, that's what we're going to read about out of the book of Exodus this morning. And since God is leading us as His children and His church into a new place, whenever He leads us out of an old place, this new place that God is leading people in the year 2020 will also need order and rhythm. And we're already beginning to see that in our families. And we need to think about that longer term because it's going to affect us into the future. So let me read a few verses that are just right where we left off. And I'm continually amazed how this story from over 3,000 years ago is mirroring our story. Our story is mirroring the story of God's delivery from slavery into freedom and from Egypt into the promised land. So Exodus chapter 23, starting in verse 10, says this. God says to His people, For 6 years you will sow your land and gather in its yield, but the seventh year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat. You shall do likewise with your vineyard and with your olive orchard. And that's really, really interesting, the vineyard and the olive orchard, but it comes up again later. So God imposed a rhythm on the farmland, on the land, and land is a very important concept in the Bible. He said to work it for 6 years and then let it rest on the seventh year. And then the very next verse, verse 12, he repeats what he said in Genesis and in the Ten Commandments. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day you shall rest, so that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the son of your servant woman and the refugee may be refreshed. So God also imposed a rhythm on people, on men, women, and work animals and work. Work 6 days and then rest on the seventh. And then there's another instance right after this in verse 14. 3 times in the year you shall keep a feast to me, and you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. As I commanded you, you shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days at the appointed time in the month of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. None shall appear before me empty-handed. You shall also keep the feast of harvest, of the first fruits of your labor, of what you sow in the field. You shall also keep the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in from the field the fruit of your labor. 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before the Lord God. God imposed a rhythm on the calendar year, on time. 3 times in 12 months, the people of God were to have special parties for special reasons. So in this unique year for us, we have a unique opportunity to reorder our lives and align our rhythm with what God intended in the first place. Because for many of us, even before this, our orders and our rhythms were not exactly what God intended them to be. This is an awesome opportunity to realign them with God. So this is my suggestion, and I think most of this is really practical and pragmatic, but it's also in accordance with biblical theology. You and your family, whether it's one person or a blended family or a husband and a wife with children or a single parent, you and your family need this. You need a predictable routine for the day, especially if you've moved your work to home, and especially if you have school age or even younger children at home. A predictable routine gives children and adults feelings of safety and feelings of comfort and, and feelings of control. So this is how you do that. Number one, and these are just suggestions, and you can adapt them to any way you want to. Number one, let the day have a beginning and an end. In the morning, put on some clothes. I know that it's been fun to be in our pajamas for the last 2 weeks, but that's not natural. That's not the way it normally goes when we do have rhythm and we have order. So put on your clothes, eat a meal, drink your coffee, and do these things before anything else. If that was your rhythm during the work week, before you check TV, before you just walk in and turn the TV on so that there can be some filler noise, or before you look at your phones and check your messages. And then the same thing, have a routine in the evening. And we know this about raising children. Put them in their pajamas rather than letting them wear their clothes all day. There's a bathroom routine, there's a meal routine, and it's important that you do this at the same time each weekday. That doesn't mean it has to be done at 5:30 every morning. It can be done later than a normal school day, but do it at the same time each weekday is a suggestion. And the younger your kids are, the more important this is, the more they need this kind of regular routine. The second thing for a routine during the day is do this. Monitor and limit the noise that comes into your life, and expand at the same time your outdoors time. So don't use TV or video screens as filler. Now, I know it's necessary sometimes, especially with young children, but we were amazed, Julie and I, at how often, and this was years ago, that we would just wake up and turn on the TV just so there could be some background noise. Another thing you could do is just exercise. I looked out the window yesterday, and my next door neighbor, he was running up and down the block with his 2 children, and he only lives 4 houses from the end of the block. So I yelled out at him, and I said, this block isn't long enough for you to get any exercise. And he said, oh, yeah, it is. And so he ran up there back and forth for a while. You can work in the yard. You can teach your kids how to weed. You can teach your kids how to rake. You can teach them how to throw a hatchet or something like that. You can cook together. My kids eat almost anything we put in front of them. I think one of the reasons is because when they were younger, and since then, we've let them cook with us. So they learn how to cook Brussels sprouts before they learn how to eat them. And now they'll eat all that kind of stuff because they put it together with us. If you do need some noise in your life, instead of a video screen, try listening to music. My wife made a observation this morning. She says, I'm figuring out that I listen to worship music during the daylight hours, but when it turns dark, I listen to Texas hillbilly music. And I don't know what that says about her, but we're working on her. The last thing about the rhythm of the day, don't forget how valuable room time is for kids. To put them in another room. They don't have to be in the same room as you all the time, and it's actually productive, and it helps develop them when they learn how to entertain themselves. They learn how to be alone and entertain themselves. And if you don't think the kids need this, then the moms really do. So that's a predictable routine for the day. But just like God instituted when He was making His nation, there's also a predictable routine for the week, which means the work days are separate from the weekends, the weekdays and the weekends. And one of the ways that we distinguish a weekend from a weekday, from a work day, is that you can worship together on Sunday. We talked about this last week. This is a perfect opportunity for families who, because of time or because of tiredness or because of disinterest, you can sit in your living room all together and watch a broadcast on your phone, or mirror that through Apple TV or those kind of things up on your TV. The second thing is to do what God suggested when he made mandatory these feasts, and that is to have a party. You can have a fancy Friday, which is when and do this at the same time you're teaching your kids how to cook and how to clean the kitchen and all that. Go get something from H-E-B that you've never cooked before, and just experiment with it. And it doesn't matter if the kids eat it or not. You spend time cooking together. It can be something fancy. You don't have to buy ribeye steaks for everybody, but you can buy one scallop or one crab and just make it an appetizer or an hors d'oeuvre. You can do pizza at a movie night. A lot of people do that. If I were you, I would celebrate the weekend by finding my sermons on the internet and just binge watching them for the rest of this coronavirus thing. But all, to be more serious, the festivals in Exodus, those 3 festivals, the festival of unleavened bread was for this reason: to remember God's actions when He delivered them out of slavery. The second festival was the festival of the harvest, which was in the middle. The festival of the first fruits also was in the middle of the wheat harvest. So they don't know exactly how much produce they're going to have, but they're able to see from the first fruits whether it's going to be positive or negative, whether it's going to be abundant or a little less than that. And it lets them know how they have to prepare for the immediate future. And then the third harvest was the harvest of ingathering. And this is where I pointed out the vineyards and the olive trees earlier on in a different verse, because the last thing to be harvested in the Israelite agricultural year was the grapes and the olives. And the grapes and the olives weren't necessary for life like wheat was in order to make bread. These were the extra things that brought joy to the end of your day when you could pop those things into your mouth. And so this was for Thanksgiving. So when you get together and you have feasts or you have parties with your children or with your family, do these 3 things. Number 1, remember God's actions. Remember that He's delivered you from a place and into another place. And the second thing to do is to try to name and recognize the potential that we have right now. We can turn something that has been intended for evil into something good. And also just Thanksgiving. Nobody in our church is the richest person in America, but nobody in our church is the poorest person in America. All of us have something to be thankful for, and we need to speak that out loud unless we forget that we have things to be thankful for and who to thank for them. I was thankful this week. My dad took my mom in Louisiana to the emergency room on Tuesday, and so I woke up early Wednesday morning to drive to go see Mom and Dad, and Dad was at home, and so when I was about 30 minutes away from there, I got word that my mom has tested positive for the coronavirus. So what I'm thankful for is that when I got there, that I didn't go into the home where she had been living for, since she contracted the disease. I didn't hug my dad. I didn't kiss him. I didn't shake his hand. I stayed away from him. We stayed outside. And I talked to my dad for about an hour and a half. And my brother and my sister are on the East Coast, and they couldn't come, so I'm the only child that could be there. But we didn't get to do what we usually did, but I was thankful because if I had found out 30 minutes later that Mom tested positive, then I would still be in Louisiana for the next 14 days. I would be under quarantine also. I'm also thankful that this is happening in the 21st century where we can do this with each other, and my dad can FaceTime my mom because they won't let him into the hospital. There's lots to be thankful for, even when we're going through suffering. And this is the last thing I want you to know. God's bride has done this before. God wasn't surprised, and God has done this before, and he's brought his church through this before. God knows how to birth a new people and shape them the way that he wants them to be shaped. God wants us to have order and rhythm. He built it into the creation. Order and rhythm decrease anxiety and stress for both children and adults. So let's choose to live like we know the one who has overcome the world. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you on screen next week.
And raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. And raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me.
I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
Raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. And I raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. Raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. Raise a hallelujah. Fear you lost your hold on me.
I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
So we sing a little louder.
Sing a little louder.
Yeah, we sing a little louder.
Sing a little louder.
Oh, we sing a little louder.
Sing a little louder.
Yeah, we sing a little louder.
Sing a little louder.
Sing a little louder.
In the presence of my enemies.
We sing a little louder.
Louder than the unbelief.
Yeah, we sing a little louder.
My weapon is a melody.
Yeah, we sing a little louder.
As heaven comes to fight for me.
Oh, we sing a little louder.
And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is
and praise and hallelujah.
Hey church, thank you for joining us today. If you want to take this discussion deeper, we have questions for you online, as well as videos and activities for you and your children. So you can visit our Facebook page or our webpage if you want to find those resources. Also, if you want to give to the church, if you want to give your tithe or you're giving to the church, you can visit the PayPal link on our website or our Facebook page as well. And again, if you need something, let us know. We want to be here for you. We want to help you in any way we can. You can contact us through the phone through the church, or you can email us at info@fairmountpark.org. Stay safe and have a great day.